So I'm just making a voice recording here since I can't use my phone and make a video with it at the same time. So I've just gone back to the Efilism panel discussion, and just been reading comments, seeing if there's been any interesting developments in the past week. So I've gone back to a thread in which I responded to Conundrum's comment, and once we had finished our exchange, Forever Wolf Films weighed in and said, I don't really seem to remember us saying that we were unaware of critiques against Efilism. Did you ever stop to think that maybe we don't think very much of the attempts that have been made? If you had critiques, quote unquote, of Efilism you wanted answered or commented on so badly in this video, Conundrum, why didn't you just submit them to Mark when you had the chance? We produced almost 4 hours worth of content here, responding to plenty of pushback and critiques. So how you can say we are sticking our fingers in our ears and somehow not responding is completely ludicrous. I've already informed you I thought your videos on the subject weren't very good, so sorry if you were somehow hurt you didn't get mentioned. Your content just isn't that memorable. When I say that was 5 days ago, that was left so and I had seen that before, but I hadn't at the time, like Conundrum hadn't responded. Now today I've just gone back there and it's like Conundrum has responded. He says, right, saying that the critiques made over the years are of poor quality is very convenient. Right, so just because it may appear convenient doesn't make it not true. Actually, it's just too convenient. Yeah, okay. Of course, Efilists can claim that they are so above the pissants who make their poor, lousy critiques that they wouldn't even bother lifting their asses from their mighty thrones to spit on them. So why engage in all this hyperbole here? From my perspective, right, I consider myself an Efilist, and from my perspective, I don't think of myself like that at all, right? Efilists can claim that they are so above the pissants who make their poor, lousy critiques and they wouldn't even bother lifting their asses like pissants. I don't think of that language would never occur to me to use, right? I've never used it, nobody here in this thread anyway has used the term poor, lousy. I'm saying they lack merit in order for me to warrant responding to them. They're don't have enough impact on me. The arguments aren't strong enough for me to change my mind. It doesn't mean they're poor or lousy, right? They just don't meet the standards. They just don't meet the standards that I think need to be met in order to be a compelling argument. Wouldn't even bother lifting their asses from their mighty thrones. So, nobody said this. I've said this. I've got a job, right? I've got things I need to do with my time, right? And if I don't consider something to be of particular merit, to be particularly compelling, then I'm not going to spend my valuable time addressing it, right? If you think that's too convenient, then sure, you're entitled to think that, but it doesn't mean it's true. Mighty thrones to spit on them, so I don't know how do you respond to hyperbole like this? How do you respond to these just exaggerated statements? I'm sure there's probably some people, like a few people who identify as Efilists, who view things like that, but the majority don't. Here we go, next thing. This shows how much Efilists, quote, want to start the conversation, end quote, more clearly than anything else anyone said. So yeah, like, this is how culture evolves, right? The way culture comes into being is through the interaction of our biology with the environment. Like the fact that we've now created a safe environment, a very safe environment, relatively speaking, in the Western world. Like, that's what's given us the freedom and spare time to really indulge these ideas. And because we have time to, all our, for the most part, obviously some people are really struggling, but for the most part, like, our basic needs are met. We live in, for the most part, apart from psychological stresses and discomfort and all that kind of stuff, like, our basic survival needs are met. So anyway, yeah, like, this is how culture comes about, and starting the conversation is the critical thing, right? Because I've seen some very compelling evidence to suggest that, and it just makes sense, right? If our culture is the product of our biology's interaction with our environment, right, that's what produces culture. That's why cultures differ in varying environments across the surface of the planet, right? And then the ideology comes about. The ideology is the rationalization of the culture. So the culture is like an inevitable thing that comes about as a result of the interaction between biology and with the environment. And then the ideology or religion or whatever is put in place is the rationalization. It's the the logical, so-called logical or rational reasoning for why that culture exists, right? But it doesn't. The ideology of it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with why the culture is the way it is. Yeah, and there's evidence for this, right? There's evidence to suggest that certain events in history, certain big cultural shifts in history that, for instance, that have been attributed to like a particular book or something like that, or a particular person being the progenitor of it. When you look deeper, that's actually not the case. Like, all of the conditions were already ripe in the general population, right? If you look at the social structure, social interactions and all that that were happening at the time, it's not, these particular individuals or books were not actually instrumental in bringing about a big change at all. They would just say, take the author of a particular book, for instance, say a book that's been credited with a shift in the collective consciousness of a civilization or a particular culture. All these people really did is they were just more astute than the rest, than the majority of people, and they wrote, they just documented what they were seeing unfold. They were just more perceptive in that way. So of course, like, starting the conversation, having the conversation is the first thing that needs to happen, because no matter how much money you invest in influencing policy, like anti-natalists and Efilists are never going to have a huge amount of money to be thrown around anyway. So the only tool we really have is language, right? Is the ability to convince and persuade other people of their own interest and the ethical reasoning behind Efilism, right? So that's what you want to do. Like, it doesn't matter how you try to influence policy, without a significant portion of the population who are in support of it beforehand. Like, the government aren't going to employ that. Governments and corporations give people what they want, despite what people say they want, because those things are, they're two very different things. So yes, starting the conversation is the critical thing to do, right? It's free, like, doesn't cost anything. You can have these. It costs in terms of like your emotional well-being. Like, obviously you're going to be ostracized to a certain degree for even addressing these things. But yeah, like, in terms of finance and that, it's free to start the conversation. And yeah, that's why I want to start the conversation. Because, like Inmendham said in I think at the end of the No Good Deal video, like, it's about, we want to do the democratic thing, right? We don't want it to be imposed on people. We want people to understand their own interest in it. So, like, I really don't see this. We just, like, what's wrong with the whole thing of wanting to start the conversation? That's the critical thing to do, right? Somehow, some people, like David Pearce, do engage in answering questions and criticisms of their ideas. Just look at Quora, where David himself answers various questions, some smart, some not so much. Well, at what point do you stop answering these criticisms? When they just don't measure up, right? When the criticisms aren't good enough, right? And I think that the reason they aren't good enough is no reflection on the individuals making the criticisms. It's actually in the facts of life, right? It's the facts of life that dictate that the criticisms of this, the criticisms of Efilism just aren't good enough. The facts of life won't allow the criticisms of Efilism to be good enough. So yeah, all these a lot of people have, but the kind of questions, this is the thing, the kind of questions that are being asked are silly questions. The questions that are being put forward are things like, would you kill someone in this, in this abstract situation? It's like, and this is the thing, like, those situations exist. Those situations where you're going to have to make a decision which has, like, you've got two bad decisions. And all you can do is go for the least worst one. But the fact is, like, no one really knows how they're going to act, what action they're going to take in a situation like that. It doesn't even matter really, like, how much they think about it, because something as trivial as how much you've had to eat, something as seemingly trivial as how much you've had to eat, at the specific time when you're put in that position to make, to decide on whether or not you kill a certain individual or something like that, is going to have a huge impact on it. So it's a silly question to even put forward. So the questions themselves aren't compelling, like, they have been answered, and at some point, like, Efilists are going to stop spending their time answering those questions because they're not relevant enough. Right, I could go on speaking about this for ages. So, like, there's plenty of Efilists who have answered these questions, and the questions themselves, like you say there, where some smart, some not so much, or exactly the same thing applies to the kind of questions that Efilists are being asked. Right, some of the questions are smart and legitimate. and others are really not. So I'll continue reading the comment. He and many like him, David Pearce that is, appreciates that people take their time and engage with the topic. He seems to enjoy that, and that's why he responds to various comments one might find somewhat silly or naive. This is how you start a conversation. Now compare this attitude with the attitude of there is no critique of my ideas that is worth my time of most Efilists. It's a night and day difference. Well, it's not really at all, because you're talking about two completely different perspectives on the subject, right? And the kind of criticisms that are being put forward are like, oh, Efilism's dangerous. Yeah, Efilism could lead to this, Efilism could lead to that. But it's just an if. It's a could. Right? And anyway, like, I think here there is no critique of my ideas that is worth my time. Like, I kind of think that. Like I said, so far I've not seen any critiques of Efilism that are compelling. Right? There are a few points worth considering. They're all definitely worth considering, but it doesn't mean they're suddenly worth my time. And like, who made you the judge of whether or not something's worth the time or not? You think they are, but that doesn't mean they are. It's a night and day difference. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Of course, it's a night and day difference, because on the one hand, like, David Pearce is putting forward the idea of engineering some kind of paradise, and like, Efilists, basically want the opposite of that, because paradise, there's no need for it. There's no need for paradise. And the cost of building paradise, right? Firstly, you can't even guarantee there's going to be any kind of paradise. We've got a huge amount of historical evidence that suggests like paradise is like failure, right? Not going to happen. And secondly, what's the cost of building paradise? How long is it going to take? What's the cost of it? What's all the risks? Like, there are plenty of questions that can be levelled against these things, and we haven't seen a panel discussion of people answering these questions. Okay, so I'll continue. Yes, we see almost 4 hours of discussion, planned, organised and held by a vegan anti-natalist, not an Efilist. The above doesn't apply to one lone lion, who at least responds to some critiques he's aware of, as best as he's able to. So Forever Wolf Films replies, again, you wanted something answered, why didn't you submit it to Mark? I've been answering critique on Efilism longer than you've been making videos, get over yourself. So Conundrum replies, you are assuming that I haven't submitted any questions to Mark, and that I even need to. Both assumptions are incorrect. I don't need to, quote, get over myself, as the topic here is not me, but Efilists and their beliefs. So Forever Wolf Films replies, I just don't understand what your expectations were. Did you really expect us to come with notes prepared on your videos? Seriously? Your opinion of your own content is so great that you think it wouldn't even be a fair assumption that you might need to submit questions for them to be answered. Are you serious? Look, I've made responses to at least one of your videos. I've sat and typed out answers to questions you've sent me, only to have what I've told you ignored. I've given your opinions a fair shake plenty of times. The bottom line is you think you know better than everyone else anyway, so what's the point? And Conundrum's final response here is, do note I'm talking about criticisms raised over the years by many people as written in the first comment. I'm not talking only about one of my videos. And yes, when comparing to most content produced by Efilists, I have a high opinion of many videos that critique Efilism. Well, that's the thing, like, I've made a couple of videos about Anti-Efilists, right, and Conundrum weighed in on both of those videos. And, you know, despite all his complaining about like various critiques of Efilism not getting enough attention, you know, supposedly not being responded to enough, like, yet the comments he's left on my own videos about it, talking about, you know, some very simple critiques I have of the basically what the anti-Efilist arguments boil down to, because like there's not a huge amount of substance to them, right? So it doesn't matter how complexly they're laid out, there's not a huge amount of substance to them. It's like this, you know, it's like Steve Godfrey coming up with these you know, all this philosophical jargon, you know, how do you ground your assumptions that you know, blah blah blah, like how do you ground it, when like essentially what's being put forward is the same thing, like Efilism's dangerous. Okay, well, how do you ground that? Like, all the evidence that's on Steve Godfrey's channel and on the Bad Ethics channel is just like, is stuff taken out of context. And if you want to judge something on that basis, on what somebody said, then like, let's take a look at Eminem, for instance, right? If we were to be selective and take certain things that Eminem has said out of context, then we could condemn him in exactly the same way, right? But then when we look at his actual life and what he's done, what has he actually done, right? Oh yeah, he adopted a daughter, he adopted somebody else's child and gave her a good life, right? That's what he actually did, despite what he said. So this is just like, again, where's your grounding for that? There's no, it's just an assumption, and you're just expecting people to take the assumption seriously that Efilism is somehow going to result in harm, when you can't point to any of it. Like the most, you know, like Steve Godfrey brought up with me this idea that you know, at some point Amanda's had to talk somebody down from actually going out in the street and you know, or going out and like what I don't know if this was exactly what was said, but like murdering people at random, for instance, just from going out and killing people. Right, well, probably somewhere in the town I live in, right, it wouldn't surprise me if someone is having that exact conversation with somebody else right now. So, you know, that happens all over the place. You know, look at take Valerie Solanas, for instance. So this is why, is because for all the, you know, for all the rhetoric that is espoused in these anti-Efilist videos, the rhetoric itself is not really based on anything substantial. It's just accusations. It's just, oh well, this might lead to this. Okay, but it hasn't, has it? You know, and also, like I said in one of my videos, if that's what you're concerned about, if you're concerned about the potential harm that could come about, then like Efilists, the group of Efilists don't really have any power, right? And firstly, like, you know, they're empathic people, right? People who really want to do harm, people who are most successful and most effective at doing harm, are people who, you know, who stand behind a mask, right? they appear to be charitable, and they appeal to people's wants and desires in order to get their power, and that's not what Ephilists are doing. Right? Ephilists have to, by their very stance, have to do the opposite of that. They have to confront people on their kind of, in a way, like some of their deepest intuitions, and they don't get. It's a thankless task. So if these people wanted power and wanted to cause harm, this really isn't the way they'd be going about it, because it's not effective. So yeah, as an example of like conundrums standards here, right? He's complaining that other people have not responded to the critiques of Efilism. So here he is coming onto my channel and criticising the video I made about with a comparison of like the stance of anti-Efilists and comic book morality. So Conundrum said, I don't see this analogy as particularly apt. Anti-Efilists aren't saying they don't want to kill the Joker, they are saying they don't see a reason why they should kill the innocent people, or even nuke the entire Gotham. Exclamation mark. Just to get the Joker, or just because the Joker exists. So I've responded, it wasn't intended to be a perfect analogy, I was expecting this response. And I don't see anywhere where I've endorsed killing innocent people or nuking Gotham. And anyway, since there is no free will, even the Joker is innocent. Should Batman not kill the Joker because technically he is innocent? So Conundrums responded, I did not say you were endorsing killing of anyone. I mentioned some critiques, I suppose that's supposed to say, some critiques of Efilism. Free will is a bankrupt concept, as is soul, elan, vital, etc. I don't know why you need to insert them in there, we're not talking about that. But it's irrelevant for morality and moral responsibility. Right. So why bring it up with me in the first place, if you're not saying that I'm endorsing the killing of anyone? Free will is irrelevant to morality and moral responsibility. Right, exactly. So Batman should kill the Joker, even though he is innocent. Either everyone is innocent or nobody is, and if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone because they are no less guilty than him. I think everyone is innocent, and guess what? They are all being killed regardless. You seem to think we can construct some sort of perfect solution from imperfect ingredients. Well, that cake is not going to rise. Bad ingredients will ruin the best recipe, and bad ingredients are all we have. And don't ask me the stupid question, well, would you kill someone if? Because nobody knows until they are in that situation, so it's redundant. Take the helicopter pilot, for example, who, when witnessing his own troops massacre civilian villagers, he turned the machine guns on them and threatened to gun them down unless they stopped. Now, what would his superior have done with him if he was asked the question, would you ever fire on your own troops? And he replied anything other than no. He never would have even been in that helicopter to protect those villagers. So then Conundrums responded again. So why bring it up with me in the first place? Because you posted a kill the Joker analogy in the video. Efilists want to exterminate life on Earth, and critics of Efilism also take issue with this point. Seems pretty relevant to me. Okay. I'll respond to that once I finish reading the comment. So Batman should kill the Joker even though he's innocent. Joker is not innocent though. Free will is bunk and irrelevant. This doesn't mean that everyone is innocent and not responsible for their actions. Right, well, well, look, if there's no free will, then the Joker is innocent because he did not decide to be what he is or do what he did, right? So he is innocent by definition. Free will is bunk and irrelevant. Exactly, it is like free will doesn't exist, but that doesn't make it irrelevant, right? Well, that's ridiculous. You can't say, oh, well, you know, free will doesn't exist, but we're going to just pretend like it does for the purposes of what? Judgment, for the purposes of standards. This doesn't mean that everyone is innocent and not responsible for their actions. Yeah, for sure, there has to be a certain degree of accountability to serve as a deterrent, right? But that doesn't mean you should punish someone for doing something they were not responsible for, they didn't choose to do. And this is where I think you don't understand biology very well. You're not taking it seriously. You're saying free will is bunk and irrelevant, but I don't think you are taking seriously the degree, like the weight that reality actually has. And if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone else because they are no less guilty than him. Guilty of what though? Well, exactly, like he's not guilty of anything. All of these people, like who's really innocent? If you're going to take this stance of guilty and innocent, who's really innocent? And innocent of what? Like the vast majority of people you think are innocent are imposing suffering, right? The vast majority of people eat meat, right? So how are they innocent? And that's what I mean, no less guilty than him. Like, if there's no free will, then by definition the Joker is innocent. Therefore, if people aren't doing what the Joker does, it doesn't mean they're any less guilty or any more innocent than he is, right? Because they didn't choose to be that either. Often the people we perceive to be not guilty of things are often guilty by through their apathy. They're guilty, yet they're somehow perceived to be innocent because they're not seen as the actors. They're seen as being acted upon. And if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone else because they are no less guilty than him. I don't think that. Right. Well, I didn't say I thought that. I'm saying if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone else because they are no less guilty than him. Right, that's a fact. They are no less guilty than him. If free will doesn't exist, then no one is responsible for their actions, right? So it's a fact that they are no less guilty than him because he's not guilty, right? And that was it. Like, that was the end of Conundrum's comment. And my response was like, I like how you conveniently neglected to respond to the last 6.5 paragraphs of my comment. They're not really paragraphs, they're actually sentences, but the way YouTube on a phone anyway lays it out. I mean, they appear as paragraphs. So let's go through the parts of my comment that he ignored. I think everyone is innocent, and guess what? They're all being killed regardless. Exactly. Like, everyone is innocent. They're all being killed regardless. Exactly. Innocent people being killed left, right, and centre. Right, and I'm saying everyone is innocent. Everyone's being killed regardless of the fact they are innocent. You seem to think we can construct some sort of perfect solution from imperfect ingredients. So you didn't respond to that. Well, that cake is not going to rise. Bad ingredients will ruin the best recipe, and bad ingredients all we have. See, this is the thing. It seems like anti-Efilists just seem to be thinking that Efilists, like, don't want there to be an alternative, don't want there to be a better, or like a more palatable alternative to 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 the cessation of life itself. Like realistically, like that's what most of them would want, but just aware of the fact that that's not it's not going to happen in the way you want it to happen. So I've gone on to say, well, that cake is not going to rise. Bad ingredients will ruin the best recipe, and bad ingredients are all we have. Like, and this is a fact. This is why, exactly why, like, the critiques of Efilism aren't being taken seriously and aren't being given a huge. Well, they are. This whole panel discussion shows that they have been given attention, but that's why you're complaining that they haven't received enough attention. Because you're just ignoring this fact. You're just ignoring like all of the historical evidence that shows that we can't do that. It's all, but like, bad ingredients are all we have to work with. And yeah, he didn't respond to that at all. Yeah, and then say the last 3 paragraphs of that, where I talk about this helicopter pilot. If he had been put up to the same lens of scrutiny, as Efilists are being held to, then he never would have been, like, he would have been removed. Based on words, right? Just based on words that represent hypothetical scenarios. He would have been removed from his position of agency to be able to affect the kind of change that he did, right? To protect people, to protect innocent people. But if he had been asked the question, would he ever do that? Exactly. He wouldn't have been in a position to do that. And this is what anti-Efilists are basically doing. They're trying to essentially deplatform Efilists. Like, of course, they're going to say that. They're not. But you don't watch what people say. You watch what they do, and you watch what's that saying? If you can't figure out what somebody's intentions are, look at what the outcome of their actions are, or the outcome of what their desired actions would be. So yeah, like he he just like didn't respond to the most substantial points. The most substantial criticisms I've got of the anti-Efilist position. He just didn't even address it at all, and that's why I didn't bother responding in any real depth to his whole comment, because I've got better things to do. And why would I bother when somebody's just going to ignore like the most obviously fundamental points? And take some of the things I've said, like and if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone else because they are no less guilty. Well, I don't think that. But by saying that, you're just suggesting or implying that I think it is okay. Yeah, I said if we say it's okay to kill the Joker for his innocence, then by the same token it's okay to kill anyone else because they are no less guilty than him. See, this thing, like, I don't think it's okay to kill the Joker, but you recognise that that's probably the best thing to do. Easiest solution in the absence of a better choice. And this is why, this is why I can't take Anti-Efilists seriously, because, like, they can't seemingly here, given every opportunity to defend your own position. Like, I'm mounting a counter argument here against the position, and you just ignored it. And exactly the same with the comments left on my other video about Anti-Efilists, right? No, not that one. Bear with me, just finding the other one. Yeah, so in this one, for example, Conundrum's trying to get me to respond to videos. Yeah, trying to get me to respond to videos, like, so I've said, I'm basically not really interested. If I thought they were worth a response, then I would have made one. Plus, like, I don't have a huge amount of time. I don't have time to do this. And this is it, right? Despite all of this complaining that nobody's responding to critiques of Efilism, it's basically in the way Conundrum wants people to respond to the critiques of Efilism. Here he is coming onto my video and not even responding to the two very basic critiques I've made of the critiques of Efilism, right? It was fairly simple. Literally in this video, I'm just pointing out what the critiques of Efilism essentially boil down to, and these are the some of the most common arguments. What some of the most common arguments I've seen boil down to. One of them is like, "Oh, it's just too dangerous," just based on things that have been said, right? Yet at the same time, it's also being said, "Oh, Efilism's so ridiculous, like it's never even going to get off the ground." Yeah, just how those two ideas are like completely contradictory to one another. Like, either it's dangerous or it's ridiculous and it's never going to be taken seriously. It can't be both, right? If it's ridiculous and never going to be taken seriously, then in the grand scheme of things, it's not dangerous. It can't be, right? And if it's dangerous, really dangerous, then it has to be taken seriously. Meanwhile, like, all the really dangerous things are actually happening, right? Evidence to be happening. yeah, and this is why, like, I don't get, yeah, I just don't get how these people think. How they think other people should be able to take them seriously. Why I don't. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, seriously, it's not that compelling, right? Saying, oh, well, philosophy's dangerous because I say so isn't compelling. So, yeah, rambling. I'll listen back to this and see whether I think it's worth uploading or not, or perhaps I will attempt it again in a few different recordings or videos addressing individual points, and try to do it a little more concisely, especially since this recording has now gone on for like 46 minutes, and the likelihood of people watching 46-minute videos is not particularly high. So yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah, never live evil.